Boo. Good evening. Well, doesn't it get more interesting by the day? It's looking like you can expect the last finale in Ukraine next week. The Eastern Ukrainian army are pretty boxed in and they've no supplies, and bad boy the Vlad might very well destroy them next week. So there's a lot of elections going on this weekend as well in the European nations. That could be interesting, especially in relation to whose side is who on and whose side are we not on. Hello there, my good man. So next week could be rather interesting indeed. So be ready. And then, of course, they are setting it up for a second round of the old pandemic. I think it's called Margaret. So quite a lot going on at the moment as we head into April, which, of course, is the month of the Satanic New Year. The 31st being the New Year's Eve and May the 1st being the Satanic New Year's Day. So everything that goes on in the year as it heads into April and the following year, it's coming to its head for the last year's events and getting ritualed up for the coming yearly events. So hello there, John. How are you doing? Hungary, excellent. Yeah, in Hungary, that's right. There's one in. There's quite a few. I forgot actually. I was looking at it yesterday, but there's quite a few. 3 or 4. Hello, Anton. Cos, hello. Chris R, hello. Debbie Bernard, hello. Hello. So yeah, expect a lot of things to go on perhaps this week, and then continue into. Well, it's the ritual actually doesn't end until when you get to the 5th of May. You're probably seeing the ends of the energies. So they're going to get a lot in between now and the 6th of May. That's guaranteed. Now, interesting. There's quite a few subjects we'll discuss tonight, but I thought we'd kick off with an interesting take. I don't know anything about this site. I don't know who's written it. It's not telling us who's wrote it. It's not giving us a date. But given we've got a lot of things going on around our Office of Monarch presently, this information is quite interesting. You may have heard it before. So I thought, here goes. Let's have a look at, it says, the royal murders in Babylon on the Thames revealed at last. It says King George VI was sent to purgatory in 1952. Group Captain Peter Townsend followed him in 1953. The real Princess Margaret was replaced by a double in 1955, and Princess Diana was the latest prominent member of the House of Windsor to be sent to purgatory. The incredible sagas of the House of Windsor is beyond belief, but it all started with the birth of top-secret twins to Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon on April the 21st, 1926. So they're saying here that Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, who you know as the Queen Mother, gave birth to secret twins April 21st, 1926. The ostensible father of the twins was Albert, Duke of York, who became King George VI in 1936. The first prominent 20th century regicide victim was King George VI. The king passed away suddenly in his sleep on February the 6th, 1952. Bearing in mind 1952, well, no, we don't have to bear in mind because it's pretty obvious when we carry on. Amazing that date was later obscured by a plane crash that killed 23 members of the Manchester United football team in Munich. So, yeah, I mean, I have studied the ritual sides of Munich. It was a sacrifice, of course, from which Manchester United just went from strength to strength. But interestingly, how it's presented here as the cover for the day the king passed away, or was murdered, as they are suggesting. And King George V, he was born in 1895 and obviously ended his days in 1952, and he reigned from 1936 to 1952. Of course, a lot of controversy around this guy. They sort of accused him of being in support of Hitler, etc. There's the fact that he married a divorcee, Willie Simpson, who I've even said studied information that suggested she was a hermaphrodite and that he liked that kind of thing. However, if they are besmirching somebody, again, to cover their own deeds, but in the eyes of the population just to accept as is, then to just destroy his entire character would in fact be what they would do. And also, Wally Simpson, she basically planted on him. So again, you know, there's a lot of shenanigans went on with King George VI, and I did study him many years ago, and could see pretty clearly that this guy was taken away out because they had other plans. Now it says, so we're talking. Princess Margaret was the last person to see the king alive. So Princess Margaret, I don't know whether you know, is Elizabeth, the current queen's sister, and she was apparently a bit of a naughty girl. But this is suggesting that the Margaret that we saw misbehaving was again a double that was implanted way back. So that it's interesting. But apparently, Princess Margaret, the real one, was the last person to see the king alive. It was the Princess Margaret that King George VI spent his last evening on earth. It was like other Sandringham evenings. The princess played the piano to her father while he did a crossword puzzle. And there was nothing out of the way to warn her that she would treasure every moment of these last hours in her memory. The king was recovering from his illness and, as always, enjoying his daughter's company. It was his favourite way of spending the evening. But this time he went to bed early, went to sleep, and never woke again. Margaret, and that's from a book, Crawford Margaret, The Story of a Modern Princess, and that was from page 20. Says the man who had access to the king at all times was his equerry, named Captain Sir Harold Campbell. Campbell fixed the window so that it could be opened from the outside. So Mr. Campbell's a bit of a bad one, Captain Sir Harold. The king left behind a grieving widow named Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, so that's the Queen Mother. Now, Greg Allett claims that she herself was not the real Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, who went off to live in France. However, there's no mention of that in this report. The king also left behind twins, Lilibet and Elizabeth, and a daughter named Margaret. Margaret was devastated by her father's sudden death, and Group Captain Peter Townsend helped her survive the heavy blow of the unexpected loss of her beloved father. Princess Margaret was inconsolable at the sudden death of her father, and consequently she grew closer to Group Captain Townsend for moral support during her bereavement. Without him to lean on, she was tempted to do a Romeo and Juliet. Oh dear. The real Princess Margaret was very bright and articulate. She had a friend at the former US Embassy in Grosvenor Square named Sherman Douglas. Sherman was the daughter of the American ambassador and a Vassar College graduate. Princess Margaret could not reveal the existence of the twins, but she did encourage her former Scottish governess, named Marion Crawford, to write a book titled The Little Princesses. So the real Princess Margaret actually encouraged the writing of that book. So that's interesting. Naturally, the publication of that book in the US created a firestorm of controversy, but few realised that the Little Princesses were twins. Here's a brief quote from the Princess Diana biographer. At this time of translation, inside the family, the arrival of a girl known as Charmin or Sass was just the tonic Margaret needed. With her sister focused on her own family, Sass replaced Elizabeth in Margaret's life, ensuring that Margaret's social life took an exhilarating and unexpected twist. The tall, animated, Vassar-educated blonde arrived in London in 1947, when her father was appointed American ambassador to London. The socialite met Margaret at an official embassy reception, and the two became fast friends. Their fun-loving and audacious personalities meshing perfectly. and that's from a book, Morton, Elizabeth and Margaret, and that's on page 97. The real Margaret was on the same intellectual plane as Sherman Douglas, and nothing like the partygoer portrayed by the Princess Margaret double. King George V wanted Princess Margaret and Group Captain Townsend to succeed him. King George VI had no male heirs, so that left the twins and Margaret as his legal heirs. Princess Margaret was the logical choice to succeed him, as the British people would never publicly accept twins as their sovereigns. In 1944, King George VI appointed a 29-year-old RAF pilot named Peter Townsend as his equerry. The twins, and especially Princess Margaret, idolised him, and they kept a model of a Spitfire in the nursery. Group Captain Peter Townsend was RAF fighter pilot and a war hero. King George looked upon him as a son, and it didn't hurt that his favourite daughter Margaret was also madly in love with him. According to the Royal Marriage Act of 1772, Princess Margaret needed the reigning sovereign's permission to marry Captain Townsend. The only impediment to their wedding was the fact that Townsend was a divorcee. The Church of England never relinquished the Babylonian dogma that marriage is a sacrament and cannot be dissolved. So it's a Babylonian dogma, according to this, that the sanctity of marriage. Well, I might go with that if it works in sync with you have offspring and then take responsibility for those offspring, while, and then when they're grown, maybe. But I think if there is a sacrament to it, it's definitely in the upbringing of the offspring. After that, if you can't stand each other, which is generally the case for a lot of people, then away you go. If Townsend married Princess Margaret, he would not be king, but a prince consort like Queen Victoria's Prince Albert, or the deceased husband of Queen Lilibet. On July 16th, 1953, Group Captain Townsend was posted as Air Attaché to the British Embassy in Belgium. Belgium has been a vital part of the British Empire since the misrule of Queen Victoria. The air race was soon grounded because he exchanged his pilot seat for a horse's saddle. So he got into polo. A charade was acted out in October 1955 when the Townsend double arrived in London and announced that his engagement to Princess Margaret was cancelled. Naturally, that announcement created as much of a furor as King Edward VIII renouncing his throne to marry the man he loved. Huh? The announcement created as much of a furor as King Edward VIII renounced his throne to marry the man he loved. Okay. In October 1955, the Townsend double arrived back in London and announced that his engagement to Princess Margaret was cancelled. The double had found a new love in Belgium, who bore a striking resemblance to the late Princess Margaret. The late Princess Margaret. It's a little bit confusing to be keeping up with what they're actually saying, but maybe we'll keep up. To cement the relationship, Marie-Luce Romagné, who was also a jockey and a millionaire's daughter. To cement the relationship, Marine. It's a bit disjointed, my apologies. It took 2 years in Belgium to train Princess Margaret for her double role. So they were somebody being trained for 2 years to take the role of Princess Margaret. Now, you see, I know it might sound a bit odd, this, but this is why they were so into cloning. And before cloning, it were about creating mind-controlled slaves who were usually illegitimate offspring. So they had the look. So they would physically, sexually abuse the child in order to create the alters to replace, if need be, whoever wasn't playing ball that was in power. And this is not just with monarchs, this is with leaders, etc. But then, of course, they stopped doing that. Well, they didn't obviously stop doing it because they still do it. But once they could clone, that changed things for them. But also, you've got to remember that Mengele was obsessed with twins because with twins, it's perfect to put somebody in power and have a double if they turn out bad. Now, there's even talks that the real Donald Trump were killed in 1989. So it might sound a bit out there, but these people are about power, they're about deception, they're about presenting this play for you to just suck onto and believe. And of course, to do that, to have that ability would be just, you know what I mean? In order to keep control over a position of power in a nation, whatever that might be, having that ability to switch would be definitely sought after, let's say. So, you know, it's not as odd as one might think. It's just, no, people don't tend to do this kind of stuff, you know. But these hoity-toits at the top, they love it. If she lived, the real Princess Margaret would never have married a profligate playboy, an actor like Anthony Armstrong Jones. The couple had 2 children, David born in November 61 and Sarah born May the 1st, 1964. Armstrong Jones was a serial adulterer and could not be faithful to any woman. By 1978, the marriage made in hell was officially ended by the first royal divorce since 1533. By 1978, the marriage was officially ended with the first divorce. Yeah, I've just done that, sorry. Oh, wait a minute. Right, he's just referring back to it's the first one since Henry VIII divorced Catherine of Aragon. After their divorce in 1978, the Princess Margaret double did not remarry, even though she had several lovers. Coincidentally, she went to purgatory on February the 9th, 2002. Armstrong Jones married one more time before he went to purgatory on January the 17th, 2017. And of course, I don't know whether you've watched that film where these bank robbers rob this bank and inadvertently end up with these pictures of this, as they're suggesting, double of fake Princess Margaret, who seemed to like African jobs, and more than one at a time, it would appear. So anyway, that it does appear to be a true story, but if this is correct, it certainly wasn't the real. She's like Princess Diana, the Princess Margaret double was cremated, bacon shake. Well, nobody got to see anything in relation to Diana, did we? It would appear she didn't die in the crash, but then they were messing about in the ambulance. But when you come to the actual, if you to put the old Diana saga down on paper, the only missing evidence in it all is the evidence that she died, that there was a body, because nobody has seen it. There's no pictures of it, and the only people that I've seen who've seen it are, of course, fully paid up collectors for this bunch of lunatics. So, and then the latest royal murder in Babylon took place in August 1997, and then he's going on then about Diana. And it says the planning for the murder of Princess Diana began way back in 1992. The Way Ahead Group, or WAG, chaired by the Queen, was created in November 1992. The purpose of that committee was to discuss critical issues facing the very existence of the monarchy. But it's not the monarchy, it's the family that are holding the monarchy. That's why they're worried. Yeah, so it's nothing to do with our nation, this. This is a battle of power people in keeping control over our sovereign office, basically. That's what they're flapping about. They're not interested in England. They're not interested in the laws of England, the realm of England, or anybody in it, apart from the components of the occupation, which is all these immigrants. They're what they care about because they're using them. But they're not in any way, and have never been interested in upholding England. This is just about these guys keeping power of our nation. The Way Ahead Group, WAG, which was created 5 months later to deal with major issues facing the royals, held meetings twice a year. That doesn't make sense. Generally in January and September. Those meetings were attended by all senior royals except Diana. The Queen was chairman, with Philip, Charles, Anne, Andrew and Edward all taking part. It's no coincidence that the separation of Charles and Diana took place in the month following the very first WAG meeting. All right, so they separated a month. Right, fair enough. The meeting of the Way Ahead Group was moved up to July the 20th, 1997, and at that time the committee gave their green light for the assassination of Princess Diana. The assassination required the cooperation of the highest officials in the UK and French governments. Diana was not killed in the car crash, but the French medical personnel took over an hour to get her to the hospital. MI6 Dr. Frédéric Malaz treated her at the crash site, and he's come out now and talking about that. But again, still, you know, facts is facts, and the only facts missing are the fact that there's a body, nothing else at all, you know, nothing. So you have to accept that, you know, if you're being logical and reasoned about this thing, that's the only thing missing. And that, if there's no body, there's no murder. You know, that's the way it goes. It's always gone that way. I know they're changing it now, of course, but in English law, there has to be a body to prove a murder, a death, you know, or any, whatever. You can't. It doesn't work. So you have to then conclude that we haven't got a clue what happened to Princess Diana, and we don't even know whether she's dead or run off with some other muckers. You know what I'm saying? We don't know. The motto of the British Secret Service is "Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." The British Secret Service specialises in helicopter crashes, car crashes, and plane crashes. The real Donald Trump died in a helicopter crash in 1989. In 1991, Senator John Hines died in a plane crash. John F. Kennedy Jr. died in a plane crash in 1999. Well, I don't think anybody doubts that the easiest ways to kill people are on the roads and in the air. The last victims of a plane and car crashes is legion, so the list of victims. Of course, very few people believe the official explanation that Princess Diana just happened to die in a car crash. So that I just thought was quite interesting, to be honest, because talking about the twins, etc., etc., you have the SWAT queen, you know, because she went from being looking okay to all of a sudden looking a lot older, I thought, and that's quite a few years ago. I don't know. Who knows what the hell's going on here, but yeah. Yeah, anyway. So I thought that'd be interesting. We kick off with that. Just because they are going to muck about now with our state system, especially the office of monarch. You know, we don't want to allow that. Hello, everybody. Yorick on. Hello, Jason Stephen. Hello there. Joining the dots. Greetings. Hello. They can upload consciousness to computers. So they say, and we did study a lot of that back in the day about how they were putting probes in all these particular parts of your head to gain this data and all that. And it looks like in the last 10 years they've really succeeded. But then, you know, a lot of time when you get into this stuff, you find that they succeeded at it 50 years ago. Yeah, and so when they're actually saying, "Oh, look, we've done this," they're so far ahead on it. It's just ridiculous. You always, like Dolly the sheep. I mean, I once studied that or read, and of course, when I'm putting these would have been in not in stupid books, you know, this new shit that's come out in the last 60 years. You're going back, you know, into the days when, and they claim to have done the first human clone in 1927, but still people are looking at Dolly the sheep, you know. So it's in the mix as oh, look, you can clone. But you're looking at the sheep. They did their job in 1927 for what they're using it all for. So yeah, it's potentially real. Interbreeding royal blood. Well, these lot are not royal blood anyway. They're certainly not in any way, shape, or form in line for this, because they're all coming from the Germans. For God's sake, these Germans weren't meant to be on this throne. That were Mary and William getting shafted. They had to sign this in. This is the contract they made in order to get William over and put him on throne with Mary. I mean, I think when you get into that, they certainly weren't comfortable with that, and as they've been in a while, there were sorts of evidence that they were sort of trying to move against it. It's alleged those who caused the crash were those who took the photos. Yeah, they went mad about that, didn't they? Yeah, the paparazzi. That's when, I mean, you can think about it, but this is, again, the death knell to proper journalism, where they would, you know, if you're a star, you put yourself up in the public view, you're open to critique, you're open for people to know what you're doing, especially if you're holding an office. That's, maybe you went a bit too far with celebrity, but then people like to know what celebrity's doing. So they certainly made a mess of that, the paparazzi. But look what happened after. They've got more privacy now than they've ever had. While they're doing more bad, and evil than they've ever done before. So it's all been a stepping stone, or destruction of Western systems, which kept our systems open, free, because skullduggery were always being uprooted by good, decent, investigative journalists. Not the case today. Those of us that do have a bash at it and pull out stuff that it's, you're not getting on your media, in effect, people are so stuck in the fantasy. When they see the reality, that's the fantasy to them. We're so far down that game now. It's insidious. It's just a case of sitting back and watching. What happening? Oh, it's all good. All is atom. Good man. How are you doing? Hot paperclip. Yeah. See, there were also 4,000 and odd, if I remember right. Rather 4,000 odd went into American universities, but I'm sure it were 4,000, nearly 5,000 ex-Nazi SS scientists and other interesting creatures came into our universities after the war on Operation Paperclip. Same in the US. Is it any wonder England's been transformed into this Prussian madness, especially with them getting you all joining Freemasonry? So, which has allowed for the Church of England to go up its ass even more and become a bitch of Vatican II. I saw on Telegram, I don't know how genuine it is, but making out Diana, Marilyn, JFK are all supposed to be alive. Well, it's possible, isn't it? It's just all possible. I'm not so sure with Marilyn, because Marilyn, she were actually banging president of the United States who were causing all the havoc because you were moving against the entire Prussian system. The CIA, Jesuit stuff, that's what that is. It's filled with them. Most of the Jesuit colleges, you're training your CIA guys. It might even be the same with FBI, but probably not as much, because the FBI, even though it's national, it's still local, and you have local FBI offices. But the CIA, without a shadow of a doubt, is the Prussian Jesuit. Knights of Malta, all these orders that are subdued to this Prussian system, the Teutonic Knights. The Queen always wears gloves. The last few years, never has gloves on. Well, have you noticed that a lot of these, when the pandemic were on, a lot of these faked acting scenarios, they had different coloured gloves on. It's coded. It's all code. Blue is the main. And I forget now, but we did have a look at that, and I did have a look at that. And there were, what were blue for? I can't remember. But yeah, the gloves itself is some kind of ritual. Maybe I'll have to remind myself of that, but they don't do anything. And the Queen's colours, she'll dress in a particular colour every single time. Well, every day, and especially if she's going to be broadcast across, the TV. But yeah, everything's real specific, because these people are slaves to ritual. I mean, at the mystery school, as I've said before, when I came out of that, my head was full of it. I was still there. But it's a very limiting. You think you're expanding your mind, but what you're actually doing is you're becoming subject to all these rituals in your mind, a number, inversions, all these things you're obsessed with. And so, to be fair, when I came away from that, there's no way would I ever want to go back in it. I would never want to start rethinking that stuff, because it's you become a slave to it, but yet you believe you're expanding your everything. It's quite ridiculous, but it's very slight, but it's exceptionally clever. But yeah. So the last thing I wanted to, you're basically looking at the world like the Matrix through, you see number. So straight away, everything's classed in a box in number. You don't want to let that envelop your mind, because you will become it, and it becomes ridiculous, and you don't have a life, basically, because everything is subject to color, day, time, dates, moon dates, sun dates, astrological stuff. it just gets ridiculously insane, you know. It doesn't mean I'm not poo-pooing all them subject matter as being interesting. But once you get your head into that world, once you're in it, it's just, no, you're not living anymore. You might think you are, but you're basically a slave to it. The wee thing is count on tea making a dead so alive. So the weird thing is, it is a count on tea making out Diana still alive. What do you mean, Anton? Binder Rothschilds, Diana. Well, they're saying that Sir James Goldsmith were Diana's father. And if you look at some of his other daughters, you know, you can see it. So in essence, she was a shit anyway. Do you know what I'm saying? Because, but then in essence, she did attack the royal family. She weren't attacking England, were she really? So, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I loved her, I thought she was great when she was doing her thing. And I was absolutely gutted when she died. I'd just come back from clubbing. I've been promoting a club and I just got back. This were all over telly. So I actually stayed up all night and watched it. And obviously, I'd had the magic pill, so I was totally focused to it. I didn't miss a trick. And I were already on this game by then, so I were taking notes of all. And what were interesting is so many of the things, the clips, the interviews that you saw on the night, you never ever saw again. The Queen was chairman of the Committee of 300 in 2000. I would like to see, because there has been some old lists of members, but if you've got new lists of this and you can show what you've got that from as her being chairman, that would be interesting. But it wouldn't surprise me either, because through this monarch, they have achieved so much. It's absolutely out of this world. So much has been achieved in this reign that it took centuries to do, up until they got past, up until they got Edward VII, I'd say. Not a good chap, him. No, Edward VII. The one with kitchen, I've forgotten how which one it is. Surprising when you're off some subject matter and off to something else, you can only keep so much in. I was thinking of Marilyn. Yeah, she was gorgeous, to be honest. But she believed that the way she had to get up to the top was to please everybody. Hence, what she became. So I'd be interested to know where you've got that data from about Committee 300, because you don't get that much information about. You just need to know that it's what they're all aiming to get on, a seat on the table, like Clinton. But of course, you have to be. So, like Clinton's a potential because of the mass murder he carried out in Yugoslavia. You know, Clinton was a proper shit. So he did sort of get himself to the level where he could have got a seat on the table, and probably has. George H. Bush had a seat on the table. You know. And you're getting a bit of this kind of you're getting an insight into this when you get the John Wick films, believe it or not, and the look into the eastern side of things isn't out of it either. If we're looking for what's controlling sort of the dark side, but for me, the Nephilim were thrown to Tartarus, a dark place, and of course we've got Tataria, we've got all that area to the side of Russia, Mongols, all these crazy tribes. You know, it's like, are we missing the elephant in the room here? And that all these bad bloodline critters were sanctioned over and kept over there, but of course then they got released, didn't they? And look at the havoc they're causing, because we're missing it all. Russia is just now a buffer between all that's east of it and everything that's west of it. And interesting, that's going to be our final topic, in that we're just going to have a look at this, just what's actually really going on with all that Russia, China rubbish. But first, I want us to have a look at this. I'm going to put this. So I'm going to put this link in. It's a map I've put on site so you can look at it. And what I'll do is I'll read. So it's a Russian, I think it's Russian paper, and it's been translated. And this image is atop of it. So you're looking at eastern southern Ukraine. Okay, that's what you're looking at. And so I'm going to go on the page now, and we're going to have a look at what this paper is trying to express. So Heavenly Jerusalem, and it's in brackets a project, and it says this article is about a hypothetical Israel-related project. For more information, contact your nearest rabbi. Okay, so then when you get into the really powerful cult centered around the Rebbe, specifically Chabad Lubavitch, which, if you see the American president signing this thing on Education Day, surrounded by rabbis, that's Chabad Lubavitch. If you see the same with Putin, it's Chabad Lubavitch, and all the other world leaders that you get to see, except here. You know, we've never seen Queen sat down there with all these rabbis behind her, have we? No. Well, because we're the most secretive nation on the planet. So basically what it's saying is this. They've had the fire starter down in Israel. It is ordained in this plan that Iran attacks Israel. That has to happen. It's a fact. So it's interesting to know what's gone on in this last couple of years there, but we still don't know for sure what's actually gone on. And basically what this is presenting, as I said, it's a Russian, I think, is that the real intention is to get back to their old land. But obviously this is probably the better part of it because it's all on the coast, so it's a beautiful place. So you're looking at the elites of these Khazarians who wanting to actually get themselves back over here. And it starts, it says Heavenly Jerusalem, also New Jerusalem, is Israel 2, or the New Israel. And it's a project whose goal is the formation of a Jewish state within Ukraine on the territories of its 5 southern regions: Odessa, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Mykolaiv, which the last one, Mykolaiv, that's where so much fighting has been going on recently. It's ridiculous. This project is long-term. Its terms are determined by the Board of Benefactors. The time is described until 2049, and even after 2060. So this is an ongoing project. Project description. It says, according to one Burkut, the author of the idea and the executive director of the project, the next 5 years is destruction and fragmentation after 19. So this will be 2019 because a lot happened then. And then, of course, we got the C19. And the next 5 years after 2024 is reformatting. And then 2029 is the first step for NI. Whatever that is. So it's basically saying it's working in sync with what we're experiencing at the moment. First from 2019, and now, of course, you've got Vlad, the Chabad Lubavitch boy, pretty much ensuring that this is a reality. Thus, by the end of 2029, about 5 million Jews are expected to arrive in the new motherland for the construction of New Jerusalem. Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has already discussed the organisation of the resettlement of Jews, as well as all possible economic and political assistance in the implementation of the project, with the current Prime Minister of Ukraine, V. Grossman. So that's before this is. So this obviously, there's no date on it. So I would then suggest this was written before 2014. Okay. Where are we? Going a bit too far down. Yeah, it says Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, D.A. Medvedev, So that's the Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, not Putin. He's the president. Senior advisor to US President Donald Trump and a member of the influential Jewish organization Abad Lubavitch, and that's Jared Kushner. Okay, and so he's involved with this. Kushner's involved with this. So then Trump will be also, which will be why they minted coins as having him up as King Cyrus. So that's interesting. So you've got Prime Minister of Ukraine, who was, you've got Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, Medved. The senior advisor, she's Jared Kushner. All parts of Abad Lubavitch, very influential in the Jewish organization, are moving to build this heavenly Jerusalem. Says the project received support from well-known public figures, political scientists, and analysts. Political. Well, I pretty much guess that Epstein's network is also a part of this, pulling everybody into or to move with it. So if they're going to destroy Israel as it stands, which they're going to do because it's part of the script, then this is only going to be for the super elect of the population of Israel. That's quite worrying. It would be if you were a Jew in Israel, I would think. Very much so. You can see here that the people that run Israel are certainly not Jewish, and certainly haven't got the interests of the Jewish people in any way, shape, or form in their minds. This is about a select elite, like in all nations, getting ready to it off to the new paradise. So if this is correct, then we can look at these timelines and see that they're not going to annihilate Israel yet. Anyway, it is noteworthy that despite the scale of the project, it's not covered either in the world or even in the local Ukrainian press, meaning the central media channels, with very rare exceptions, so it does occasionally. Almost all information about the project implementation comes from its executive director, Igor Burkett. Video interviews. Yeah, now I've tried to watch these videos. You can't watch any of them. Google just keeps coming up saying, you have to sign it, you have to this, you have to that. It's just, so we're not allowed to look at these videos for whatever reason. And whatever they've set up, it's Google that's doing it. Video interviews of I. Burkett covering the progress of the project are posted on the YouTube channel Rasvet. So you might find them, but it wouldn't let me watch them. The official announcement of the New Jerusalem project is planned to be made after the adoption of the law on the decentralization of Ukraine in 2021 to 2022. Okay, so that's what's going on here. In July 2019, Switzerland allocated 25 million euros, including for the decentralization of Ukraine. So, okay, so Switzerland allocated 25 million euros, and included of that figure was to fund the decentralization of Ukraine. The New Jerusalem project started in early 2017 with the landing in the port of Odessa of a group of immigrants from Israel headed by I. Burkett. The group of 183 Jewish pioneers arrived in Ukraine from Haifa to lay the first stone in the foundation of heavenly Jerusalem on the fertile land of southern Ukraine. The management of the New Jerusalem will be entrusted to the Council of Benevolent, the Council of Benevolent, they're calling themselves, consisting of 12 leaders. So this is like a Sanhedrin kind of thing. Let me just check that you're still here and haven't been whizzed off. Okay. So that's interesting. A native of Kiev. So this is going to be the new Israel, isn't it? So this is where the Sanhedrin are going to be based, which gives you insight as to, they're going to annihilate the one in the Med. Because it's part of the script, Iran has to do it. Iran's controlled by the same people. It's just not a problem. A native of Kiev, Golda Meir, 5th Prime Minister of the State of Israel, was declared honorary eternal head of the council. So that's Golda Meir. Netanyahu will become the chairman Prime Minister, after the completion of the powers of the Prime Minister in the State of Israel. Well, that's interesting, isn't it, then? Because nobody could get him out. And then all of a sudden he's been got out. Well, he will. He's going to be Deputy Chairman Prime Minister of this charade. Interesting. The former head of the US Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, will manage the finances. Okay. Defence issues will be in charge of the current Minister of Defence of Israel, a native of Chisinau, Avigdor Lieberman. So Avigdor Lieberman is going to be in charge of defences. And that'll be for David Rothschild, because he's the war side of this this shindig. The Secret Services will be headed by Yakov Kedmi, former head of the Native Bureau for Relations with Jews of the USSR and Eastern Europe, who was born in Moscow. Political scientist and publicist Avigdor Eskin, who was born in Moscow, would be in charge of foreign affairs. So it's all Russian guys that are putting in here, apart from Netanyahu and Golda Meir. Internal affairs will be entrusted to the former Minister of Internal Affairs of the State of Israel, Soviet dissident Natan Sharansky. The media will be headed by the famous Russian TV presenter Vladimir Solovyov. Questions of justice will be decided by a native of the Crimea, lawyer Tatiana Montian. The Speaker of the Council will be the former President of the Russian Jewish Congress, Evgeny Satanovsky. The Chief Rabbi is supposed to appoint an ethnic Ashkenazi Khazar version of the appearance of this branch of the Tree of Israel, the hidden apostle. So the Chief Rabbi is supposed to appoint an ethnic Ashkenazi Khazar version of the appearance of this branch of the Tree of Israel. So they're making it up as they go along. They're making it up as they go along the entire show, which, of course, is this Noahide system. So they want to... I mean, it's just unbelievable that they managed to get this far, to be honest. You know, people are so stupid, especially if you hold a religion. You're so programmable. It is ridiculous. Ridiculous. It is planned to create two capitals in New Jerusalem. The first political and business capital will be located in today's city of Dnepropetrovsk and will be called consonant with the New Jerusalem project. The second cultural will be located in Odessa and will be called Odessa. Well, if that's not a mimic of Egypt, yeah? Two capitals. There's no other country has two capitals. Yeah? Apart from Egypt, as a nation, had two capitals. Back to the last few live streams. We're dealing art cult here, you know. Taken over by the Hittites first, which is Phoenicians, you could say, and then by the Babylonians, who then created the second temple. That's how long this has been going on. Reforms in Ukraine. The New Jerusalem project is consulted by the Polish Minister of Finance, Leszek Balcerowicz, who together with Margaret and other participants is the author of Economic Reforms in Ukraine. According to the authors of the reforms, the depopulation of the population should become the basis for the well-being of the citizens of the future Ukraine. The main principle of the reform is that the smaller the population, the higher the GDP per capita. Therefore, the main way of reform is a steady gradual decrease in the population of the country, admits Margaret. Now, that's in sync with Byzantine Comnene. Comnene, of course, dealing and doing deals with the Venetians back as Constantinople were falling, or Byzantium were falling to the Mongols, who mass converted to Sunni Islam. See, everything from my studies is you've got your religions, and then as soon as these people from the East come in, from the Mongol situation, they become the inverse of what it is they're doing. And obviously, with that far down now, that the three religions are up their own ass in relation to how they understand the old traditions. And it's always forces coming out of Mongol. And we're going to just have a look at another guy in a minute, just to cement that. I've done that, haven't I? So the main way of reform is a steady gradual decrease in the population of the country. So that's what they're doing in Ukraine. In accordance with these reforms, in 2017, the Minister of Social Affairs politician Riva said, there are not only too many Ukrainians, but they still eat a lot. Well, it's like it's a growing paradise. So they can eat a lot because they're growing it. So basically they want it. V. Grossman, and that was a guy called V. Grossman. Grossman. In turn, found courage, and for the first time in the history of Ukraine said, Ukrainians study too much. And I, Burkett, and V. Grossman, we both understand that for a Ukraine child, this should be a day of kavan, a day of siblule, a day of embroidery for a Jewish child. This should be a day of physics. But for a Jewish child, this should be a day of physics, a chemistry day, a program. So everybody else should be fed shit, but the Jewish child has to be taught physics and chemistry. It doesn't look like it's except. I wouldn't say this is going along with multicultural idea. I think this bordering on supremacist stuff. As of the end of 2016, Burkett cites the following sources of project financing within the framework of economic reforms in Ukraine: 250,000 from one of the IMF tranches, 1 billion, 250 from the F4 fund, Ukrainian Economic Modernization Fund, Switzerland, Friedman, Feldman, Fishman, and Firtash. We hope to receive another $450,000 from the George Soros Foundation. So this is your Biden. This is all your Black Lives Matter. This is all your Antifa idiots. All part of this shit. Because anything tied to George Soros is the shit. In another video, the executive director of the project speaks as follows. The foundation financial is led by divine providence. Today, 2.3 billionaires leave for the other world every other day. So they're already going. If they leave all the inhabitants to their relatives, it will harm them. They can donate money to the project. Assistance is also expected from the billionaires of Kazakhstan, Russia, and many other countries. This will be help from Russia, Germany, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the House of Rothschild, the USA, from hundreds of family funds, from Hollywood, from Apple, from Facebook, from Google. Are you seeing that? Bank of England, European Central Bank, America, Russia, Germany, Hollywood, Apple, Facebook, Google. Yeah? Now you can see what controls all this. Never mind Queen of England. She don't control anything. She's just the front, the face, because she heads an empire, as it were. Bloody hell. In July 2019, Ukraine received funding from Switzerland, 25 million euro. The EU gave 137 million plus 29.5 million, and technical assistance from the US, 695 million. We are talking about supporting public administration reforms and qualitative changes in the provision of services, as well as decentralization. So this is massive. This is massive. Jeez, man. Criticism. Despite the scale of the project, its consistency with high-ranking people, Netanyahu, Medvedev, Groisman, Jared Kushner, Lazek Balkrowicz, it is not covered either in the world or even in the local Ukrainian press. Except the exception is in the Israeli press. So the Israeli press promote this in Israel. In his informative videos, Burkett speaks more than once about the outstanding figure of our time, Lee Kuan Yew, the creator of the Singaporean economic miracle. Burkett cites this statement as an example and speaks of Singapore as a possible development model for New Jerusalem. At the same time, the approach of Burkett to the finance and development of the project is based respectively on the desire to receive money from global corporations and the depopulation of the population of Ukraine. The fact is that from the book of Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore History, from the third world to be the first, It follows that Lee Kuan Yew has nothing to do with the approach of I. Burkett to the development of the state. He never counted on foreign money and dealt with the solution of numerous problems in the development of Singapore, relying only on his exceptional mind and human resources, never resorting to population depopulation. So there's definitely a distinction between Singapore and what they're planning to do in Ukraine. I. Burkett, speaking on a video interview on YouTube channel Razvat about the New Jerusalem project, makes many shocking statements, which, according to critics, indicate that he suffers from chauvinism. So at the beginning of the video, a picture of the future New Jerusalem is presented with an explanation. The dog in the picture represents all nations except the Jewish and Ukrainian. To the question of one of the spectators, I will not allow a Jewish project to be built on my land. I. Burkett answers, Dear Petya, there is nothing of yours there and never has been. Petya, you are a disappearing small particle of biomass that the wind of change brought into our objective reality. This was explained to you under Kravchuk, under Yushchenko, etc. Petya, look around you and see where you are, and remember, there is nothing there. There was not, and there will not be anything of yours. Just nick something, and then that's it. And then the world supports it because the world's stupid. Speaking about a possible threat to Israel, I. Burkett reports that in this case, from the territory of Heavenly Jerusalem, nuclear strikes with medium-range missiles with nuclear warheads prohibited by the INF Treaty will be launched on possibly Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Iran, quote. Thanks to Crimea, we can bomb with impunity from Heavenly Jerusalem any state that acts from anti-Semitic or anti-Israeli pro. Are you getting this? They set itself up to be able to just bomb anybody with nukes. If they see you being anti-Semitic, which is a description of a group of languages, or anti-Israeli positions. Even if Turkey prohibits the passage of missile over its territory, then a nuclear strike will also be inflicted on it. Now, does this sound like some kind of Heavenly Father kind of script? Interesting fact. Answering the question, do the Jews plan to leave Israel completely in the future? I. Burkett spoke as follows. Jews will not leave Israel until our sun goes out and turns into a white dwarf, which will happen in about 7 billion years. The fact is that before the moment of transformation into a white dwarf, the sun will go through a phase of a significant increase in size and increase in its brightness. This will happen in 3.5 billion years. By that time, the water from the surface of the planet will be completely disappear, volatilizing into space. Well, he's a clever guy, this guy. He seems to know a lot. This catastrophe will lead to the destruction of all forms of life on Earth. It's very unlikely that the Jews will remain in Israel at that time. So this is our Burkett. Obviously, he's in touch with Big Cheese because he knows how long it's going to last. The crack. So what's their sun? Let's have a look at our sun. What's the sun? Okay. Reflecting on the future of convenient transport between Israel and New Jerusalem, I. Burkett allows the use of comfortable airships. Interestingly, they will be equipped with everything that the soul of a Jew desires, including swimming pools and playgrounds. 2 existing nuclear power plants on the territory of the future New Jerusalem are supposed to be used for Bitcoin mining. The mining of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is based on the proof of work method, in which the probability of creating the next block is higher with the owner of more powerful equipment. An alternative to it is the proof of ownership method, or proof of stake, in which the probability of the participant forming the next block in the blockchain is proportional to the share that is accounting units of the cryptocurrency belong to this participant from their total number. In view of the fact that the POS does not require significant energy costs, cryptocurrencies based on this principle seem to be more promising at the moment. Burkett, talking about New Jerusalem, repeatedly refers to chapter 21 of the Revelation of John the Theologian, which deals with the second coming of Christ and the creation, more precisely, the descent from heaven of heavenly Jerusalem. Well, also based on Revelation, the composition of the council of benefactors of heavenly Jerusalem is chosen. Moreover, so they're chosen. So we're going to have to look at Revelations of John the Theologian at some point because it's based on him. Moreover, if the revelation speaks of representatives of the 12 tribes of Israel, then the Jews are elected to the council of benefactors with it. See, it's bullshit. There were only 10. There were 10. It may be, then the Jews are elected to the council of benefactors without regard to belonging to any tribes. The fact may be due to the fact that 10 out of the 12 tribes of Israel are considered lost. During the implementation of the Heavenly Jerusalem project, the conflict between the Galatians and the Jewish community in Ukraine was exposed. In one of the videos, Margaret reads out a poem from a certain Jew, Mikhail Fonkin, entitled To the Slanderers of Jerusalem, which is clearly a parody of A.S. Pushkin's poem, To the Slanderers of Russia. Moreover, Margaret does not give reference to A.S. Pushkin, but presents this mix. Pushkin, I think he would have been a rep. Presents this mix as an insight of this very Fonkin. 2 points from Fonkin's poem can be noted. The words of A.S. Pushkin, redeemed with blood, were replaced with redeemed with money. Also, the words, you did not read these bloody tablets, were replaced with, you did not read either the protocols of the wise men or the tablets of Moses. Well, the protocols of the wise men are the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. And he says here we're talking about the protocols of the elders of Zion and the main document, Judeo-Masonic conspiracy, as well as the Pentateuch of Moses and the Talmud, the main books of Judaism. So that's just an insight as to what's going on in the Ukraine. Really, what is really going on? So Russia is a big part of this trip. US is, so it's Biden. We're playing along because this bunch of tits down at Westminster are the most ridiculous idiots that I've ever known. These sanctions they've put out across Russia, it's just ridiculous. I mean, BP have now said that they can't afford to buy oil or gas next month, or not afford. They can't do it because he wants it selling or buying in rubles. So the government here is destroying England in support of this nonsense that's going on in Ukraine. You know, it's no wonder they've been bigging up this Tartaria as some superb, supreme thing, because it's the area where these guys are going and they want everybody to worship this kind of thing with 2 capitals. I mean, if this is not Egypt rerun, I don't know what is. Right, so that's that bit. Where are we? That the war on Ukraine has ended the New World Order. Well, I didn't see that, no, actually. You're bang on the money with the John Wick films. Yeah, absolutely. They're all, you know, this is how it's set, the mafia kind of system. You know, they're crawling up the arseholes to try and get a seat on the table. And now that's so powerful. But you're not looking at the Italian mafia here. You're looking at this Khazarian mafia, the Mongols, yeah, the Kazakhs, all these Eastern Asian nations that, and then you look at, you know, the dragon gives the beast its power. That's China facilitating this priesthood. Yeah, this priesthood controls these empires, does it not? That's the beast system. You know, it's not a beast coming out at water with big heads like Jason and Argonauts or something like that. That's not what it is. It's a system. And it's a slave system. It's just horrendous. They've already got you on slavery. You've just obeyed, you know. It's quite ridiculous. What about the Queen's involvement in the Druid High Priestesses? Well, what Druid are they? Druidess? Yeah, of course they are. So they're just, like they always do, they mimic what's already there, don't they? And then pretend to be on your side. Do you see the article? No. That's going to, stick with your vaccine. Yeah. Just sent you top secret committee 300. Thank you very much. Did you send that to me email, mate? Yeah. Cheers. Russia go back. Well, we're in a mess now with what this government has done. We're not actually, stop. This is another thing you all need to stop doing. You go, oh, it's Tories. No. Parliament is made up of 3 parties. It's Parliament that's pushing this through. So every tit that's an MP is pushing this through because they're working together. This party game is just for your consumption. Ukraine on the old maps, exactly. Khazaria, then a big chunk of Tartaria. The Tartars were brutal. They were not liked. They were brutal people, and they were slavers. Yeah, this is why the slavers were so big in Arabia. It's just a little trip down onto, on eastern coast, on southeastern coast, and you're slap bang in Arabia. It's why the Arabs have always been slavers. You live near Ukraine, dear John. Well, if you can hear that, what they're doing, the plan is to depopulate your nation, because they won't just stop at Ukraine. This is what they're playing at. Andrew Gill's late again, detention. Has to be detention. The banking elites meet each other each month. Yeah, and they meet once a year on the QE2 in the Bay of Venice. That's the black nobility. The new Venetian party of the North. Every year on our ship. Because our monarch is the figurehead of it all. And while people believe she has the power, you're not seeing the numpties at the back of her. She has no power. No power, apart from pressing the buttons, signing the pen. It is, yeah, and they will destroy Israel, or 2/3 of it, like you said, because it's part of the script. They're playing to this futuristic prophecy that's been, and they've projected it into the future. This is what they're doing, and they're, we're to the end of it now. They're there. So Tartaria, you can understand why they've built it up as the supreme, and people, your flat earthers swoon at its feet. The Tartars were assholes. Now the next one, 4 military helicopters just flown over Paddy. They're probably coming here. They're coming here for me. You're not far away. So everybody's, it's all this, you're playing into this game again because people are just so stupid. Right, so this is another interesting one which fits in with this as well, because it gives us an idea of who the Tartars are. Where the hell is it? Oh, there we go. Now, why Ivan the Terrible was even more brutal than his name suggests. So this is Ivan the Terrible, who became the first Tsar of Russia. It says Ivan IV Vasilyevich rose to power in the 16th century to become the first Tsar of Russia, and earned the nickname Ivan the Terrible along the way. From 1547 to 1584, so this is King Henry VIII's time, Ivan the Terrible reigned as the first Tsar of Russia and made a mark on the country that still endures to this day. Consolidating power in the region, he consolidated more power in the region than any ruler had ever seen before. Ivan Vasilyevich was known for waging bloody wars against his enemies and massacres against his own people. He could be especially brutal towards his family, and even killed his own son during one of his trademark rages. In other words, it's easy to see how he got his fearsome nickname, of course, Ivan the Terrible. But Ivan the Terrible didn't live in an English-speaking country, so that meant that his title, Grozny, had to be translated, and terrible is the closest thing to the original meaning. But some believe that a more accurate translation might actually have been closer to this, scary as hell. So Ivan, scary as hell. Ivan the Terrible was born to Basil, the Prince of Muscovy, in 1530. In those days, Russia was a patchwork quilt of duchies and principalities, which were basically running their own live-action Game of Thrones performance. The duty of a prince was mainly to collect taxes for Russia's Mongol overlords. Did you get that? So in 1530, Ivan's on job, and his duty was to collect taxes for Russia's Mongol overlords, who ruled through violence and brutality. Given this power structure, it's not surprising that Russia's nobles, known as the boyars, were more interested in looting the peasants and throttling each other than in working together to push out a declining Mongol empire. Since everyone who tried to do that would end up rolled in a carpet and trampled to death by ponies, it was just safer for the dukes and other gangsters to line their own pockets and protect the status quo. In the early 1500s, there was no indication that the world was about to be blown to flinders, and even less that young Ivan Vasilovich was going to be the one to do it, especially after the 3-year-old's father died in 1533. Now, it says how Ivan was abused by the aristocracy, so this is when he was a kid. After his father's death, Ivan was officially the Prince of Muscovy. Somewhat less officially, he was at the mercy of the local aristocracy. These men needed to cover that having a prince provided to preserve the formality of local rule. The men needed to cover that having a prince provided to preserve the formality of local rule. But in reality, they weren't planning on letting Ivan grow up to become a leader, especially not a powerful one. That's why instead of seeing to his education and preparing him for the burden of the throne, they locked him in a confined space for days at a time and beat him mercilessly, with little or no provocation. On good days, young Ivan the Terrible was restricted to the palace grounds, usually his mother's bedchamber, until boyars of the Shuisky and Belsky clans poisoned her when Ivan was 8 years old. Orphaned, physically weak due to malnutrition, and probably terrified out of his mind, Ivan the Terrible knew his only hope was to make friends among the boyars. It was probably those friends who arranged for Ivan to be crowned Tsar of all the Russias in 1547, when he was just 16 years old. Gradually, Ivan's freedom of movement increased and he started making alliances among the nobility. Then he began to consolidate his power. The state of Ivan's realm makes you wonder why he would even bother. Still suffering under the Mongol yoke, Russia spent much of the 1550s dealing with drought and the famine that followed, Tartar invasions, war with Lithuania, which was a bigger deal back then than it would be now, domestic disturbances and trade embargo organised by Poland and Sweden, which was also a much bigger deal back then. So the Tartars were, at war with Russia. They weren't a good bunch, these boys. They were slavers and shitasses. To top things off, Ivan's first wife died in 1560, and he believed that she'd been poisoned. Shockingly, she wasn't the only one of Ivan's 8 wives who suffered this horrible fate, allegedly at the hands of his enemies. But his first wife's death hit him especially hard, pushing him into a spiral of depression. When an infallible sense of timing, Prince Andrei Kurbsky chose this moment to defect to the Lithuanians, taking with him a chunk of Ivan's army, and started laying waste to Russian territories in the northwest. Ivan the Terrible responded to these problems in what strikes a modern person as the only sane way. He quit. In 1564, Ivan retired to his country estate and sent off a couple of public letters, announcing his abdication and blaming the boyars for all of Russia's misfortunes. The letters were written in archaic style, but the message was clear: you're on your own, Russia. Hope you like not having a Tsar. In retrospect, the abdication seems like a cunning political gambit. By the time he quit, Ivan the Terrible had spent over a decade accumulating power, to the point that the government essentially didn't work without him. His high-profile flounce was probably calculated to inflame the peasantry, among whom he was popular, to push the boyars to surrender. In any event, he had his terms ready when the nobles came crawling back to him. For a while, Ivan the Terrible acted as though he were reluctant to come back, but eventually agreed to return for a price. First, he wanted to be granted absolute power over life and death among the boyars, and the same people who once locked him in a closet and poisoned his mother. He also demanded control of the military, sole authority over the treasury, and the power to administer the courts himself. The desperate nobles agreed, and almost immediately regretted it. Now, with the unchecked power, he first set up the Oprichniki, which has been described as a 16th century version of the SS. The members who rode around with severed pigs' heads on their saddles were tasked with arresting both real and perceived enemies of the Tsar. Shockingly, the Oprichniki were also granted total immunity from all laws. The custom still persists to some degree in Russia today. That's interesting. Well, it does in MI5 and MI6. License to kill, remember. They're not joking. Where many members of the government are also immune to legal prosecution. Second, Ivan sees the... You see, that's what's happening here now, across the West. This system's been put in. Fearing that the city of Novgorod might defect to the Lithuanians, Ivan sent the Oprichniki to teach everyone a lesson. No one knows how many people were killed in the 1570 raid, as it happened when the city was suffering from an epidemic, but it was certainly in the thousands. 2 years later, having used the oprichniki to break domestic opposition, Ivan deposed of his army of murderers by throwing them against the Lithuanians and allowing countless slaughters to unfold. Ivan the Terrible then had the few survivors either locked up or executed after the battle. Despite his deservedly brutal reputation, Ivan the Terrible was also a dedicated supporter of the arts and contemporary culture. He even used his power to commission and construct the construction of the Moscow print yard. I'll put these links up, obviously, after so you can see, which introduced the first printing press to the country in 1553. Print yard initially focused on religious texts, then broadened its scope to include historical manuals. Setbacks occurred when the press was burned to the ground by a group of angry scribes who felt their livelihoods were being jeopardized. But before long, things got back on track and the Moscow print yard became a fully functioning printing house once again. Ivan the Terrible was also responsible for some of Moscow's most iconic architecture. He commissioned the beautiful St. Basil's Cathedral, one of the most recognizable and beloved architectural sites in Moscow. According to legend, Ivan was so impressed with the architect's work on St. Basil's Cathedral that he had the architect and all of his workers blinded so they could never create anything as beautiful again. Fortunately, historians have mostly decided that this story is apocryphal, especially since Ivan appears to have hired the same man to construct further architectural wonders after the famous cathedral. Interestingly, Ivan himself dabbled in the arts. He was a poet and a remarkably talented composer, as evidenced by his orthodox liturgical hymn, Sticheron No. 1, Honour of St. Peter. It seems that even in the midst of turning things down during his reign, he also wanted to build things up. But this would not last forever. For the remaining 12 years of his reign, Ivan the Terrible seemed intent on terrorising all 1.5 million square miles of his territory. He led a war on top of one another. And he was already fighting against the lingering Khanates, so that's your Khazarians, all those Khanates, breaking the torches for good, so he broke the torches once and for all. He reorganised the church, making himself the head. So the Tartar Empire, if this is correct, didn't go beyond the 1500s. And he broke the bureaucracy and rebuilt it into his liking, all while increasingly lapsing into violent rages. During one such raid, Ivan beat his pregnant daughter-in-law hard enough to cause a miscarriage, all because he didn't like the way she dressed. Ivan's aggrieved son, who was also named Ivan, decided to confront his father. During the ensuing argument, Ivan the father either grabbed Ivan the son and threw him against a wall or struck him in the head with a scepter. Either way, the blow was hard enough to kill his own son, so that's the heir to the throne. Young Ivan's death has been a controversial subject in recent years, and some Russian nationalists have sought to cast Ivan the Terrible in a gentler light and revise his violent history. But it's hard to dispute the evidence that Ivan was truly terrible, perhaps even more so than his name suggested. So it says, continuing his infamous rages until the very end of his life, Ivan the Terrible died of a stroke, which was possibly rage-induced. During a friendly chess game in 1584, seeing how he had killed his heir 2 years earlier, the crown was passed to Ivan's mentally disabled son, Fyodor. Fyodor presided over the general decline of his father's empire and died in 1598. The period that followed Fyodor's death is known as the Time of the Troubles, ushering in yet another turbulent chapter of the country. So that's your Ivan the Terrible. But just gives you an insight into the fact that the Mongols controlled Russia. The Tartars were part of that because they were always attacking them. So we need to start looking at history as we know it, and more importantly, what's being pushed through this Tartaria stuff as another major load of lies, basically. So that's the three. Then the final one I'd like to discuss is I'll have a look at this first, see what you guys are. Right, well, they haven't flown over them military helicopters. I haven't doing them. Well, let's be honest with you. The real serious guys at the top of the tree, which is none of this shenanigans, this is just puppet stuff. They're all in Antarctica. I mean, in 7 or so years ago, they named great swathes of Antarctica after this royal family. So that's Elizabeth, Anne, Charles, Andrew, and other. So there's a lot going on there, and they're all working together, the elites, on that. Zelensky. He's a toss. He's just a complete joke, isn't he? That fella, he is an absolute joke. I mean, I feel sorry for Russians. You know what I'm saying? As well, the people. It's like they've got a psycho running them. We've got psychos galore running here. America's got a fucking Alzheimer's complete fruit bat, and the rest of his clan are no better. But that seems to be coming to an end with this Biden, his son's, which I looked at quite a few years ago. I think before Biden, while Trump were in. These laptops, nothing new. I'm surprised it's only just been thrown across mainstream media now. It's been out for quite a few years. It's nothing new at all. Of course, she's a major player. I'm not disputing that. But when it comes to the real power of all this, we don't even know who they are. We probably don't. We might have heard the names in historical context, but we wouldn't recognise them for what they are. Well, in fact, even the insider said that, didn't he? Because I've always said this: if you can see it, it's puppets. If you can see it and read about it, it's the puppets you're looking at, and I'll stand by that today. Even though we talk about the Rothschilds, all these hoity-toits, they're getting their orders. But then, as I said last week, it is possible that this bunch of Johnny-come-latelys have pretty much took it over. It won't surprise me. Well, okay, you're saying she hasn't got very little power in world events. But what I'm saying is this. Of course she has the massive power because she's running the Commonwealth. But when it comes to A lad Z, she isn't the one making the decisions. She's probably making decisions in her own personal portfolio. But when it comes to the power, who's telling who what, where and when, forget it. No. But she's powerful in that she's got, in the hands of this office of monarch on England, is power. That's why they've kept it alive. That's why they've kept up. They've wrecked all the other monarchies in Europe with since the French Revolution and then Napoleon. But they kept this one for a reason, to front it. That's why it's been done. Because they're just German. I mean, people don't realise that the whole of the Roman Empire has absolutely nothing to do with Italy or Rome. Nothing. It's Germanic. Yeah, the Carolingians were Germanic. The Merovingians were Germanic cum Gaulish. It's nothing to do. It's a completely separate thing. Which is today we're looking at the Prussians, the Jesuits. It's got nothing to do with Rome or Italy. It's the Holy Roman Empire. It's the Germans, man. So I know what you're saying, but puppets, puppets. Right. RCE code name C3AM or March, which otherwise Swiss door. Swiss indoor. I don't know what that means, Anton. Andrew, I only state facts. Well, thank you very much. We only get one. Anton Regional, I stand corrected. I probably right. No, well, that's lovely. Right, now. So this, I've actually been pushing it on my Twitter, and I've pushed it off Facebook a little bit, but this whole charade with Russia is just hiding what's really going on with the CCP, which is the Bolshevik power base in China. Yeah, the uber dictatorship in the making, and what they're doing to their people. I mean, and this is another thing, the money's there and it's been there for a long time, but now they're encouraging Western people to do the research over there. They're encouraging everybody to set up the business over there, but you can't own it. You go with that, you don't own it. They own it. China, the corporation, owns it. And that's been so all the time, which is why it's been able to accrue so much wealth so much power by wealth, and through that now it's actually quite mighty in military capacity, because it's got a big military capacity, not on par with the United States, not by a long shot, but we don't know what technology they're playing with at all, and I can guarantee that it will be a lot different, enough to actually make up so much of what the West has as a mechanical military pretty much obsolete. That's how I'm looking at this game, and the dragon is giving the beast system power, and we're looking with the heavenly Jerusalem. That is going to be the seat of power for these nut jobs. So Orban's won it, has it? Well, that will be interesting now. That will be very interesting. So he's won it. Okay, excellent. That's John. So there's about 3. Is there about 3 or 4 inter-elections this weekend over in Europe? I forgot. And really yesterday I was looking at this stuff as well. Surprising what a day makes, and forgetfulness that I have. Right, so Orban's won. Right, thank you for that. That's going to be interesting. Right, to business. Where are we? Okay. So, I'm just going to begin it with this. And that is, it says, make the CCP's message the loudest of our times. Okay, that's the title of this little passage. And it's, the C government go global, multi-platform, national and international. Strategic communication strategy aims to influence international perceptions about China. So they're completely manipulating everybody's perception of China. And then inside China, they can't get on the there's no Facebook, they can't get on all the stuff that we can get over here in the West. And it's getting ever more where they're being prevented from getting on these systems. So outside worlds, China's presenting itself with this glory. But let me get this straight. It's not the Chinese people, because the Chinese people are pissed off with this as well. However, because they're jangling cash and cash, like the West has loads of lumpties like that who are now all pissed off into Dubai, so we don't need them. There's a lot of them people in China as well, so it's always going to move forward. And how can we blame them? They're only doing what the West has been doing since Bank of England was set up, Bank of Venice even. Agencies about China, and it's shaping international debates about the Chinese government to strengthen management over the Chinese language public sphere in China. So they're managing the Chinese language as well, and globally. So in China and globally, because they won't want people speaking Chinese, will they? That are not Chinese. Agencies Xinhua News Service, CGTV, CRI, State Council Information Office for Foreign Propaganda, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and other relevant state organs are all operating to this agenda. And policies under the slogan, Tell a Good Chinese Story, that's the slogan, restoring to prominence China's cultural and public diplomacy. Central and local governments are once again providing massive subsidies for cultural activities aimed at the outside world, from scholarly publishing to acrobatics to Chinese medicine. Yeah, well, we're full of over here Chinese medical practitioners everywhere. Now, we're going to go to this, because this is going to give us an insight into just how vast the power of China is in the entire world through groups and organizations that are seen as beneficent, beneficial as it were, but they're not far from it. So here we go. We'll probably have to run this for a few different do's over time, because there's a lot to go through. So I just want to introduce us to it tonight, because I've got a couple of herbs to do, because I did say we'd always do that. And maybe we'll always leave the herbal thing till the end, because then it's easily accessible for you and you know where to get it from if you need to get back to it. However, now, this was put together by Professor Anne-Marie Brady, who has got in so much trouble about this. They've tried to block her, do everything they can to stop this. It's called Magic Weapons, China's Political Influence Activities under Xi Jinping. So that's the smiling tosspot. You know, he's the most fake, sadistic, evil bastard. And just, you can see that by looking at him when he tries to smile. Because that's not a smile, is it? That's a he. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a cigarette. So, Professor Anne-Marie Brady, Global Fellow, Wilson Center, Washington, D.C., Department of Political Science and International Relations, and University of Canterbury, Christchurch, New Zealand. She said, in September 2014, Xi Jinping gave a speech on the importance of a united front work, political influence activities, calling it one of the CCP's magic weapons. The Chinese government's foreign influence activities are accelerated under Xi. China's foreign influence activities have the potential to undermine the sovereignty and integrity of the political system of targeted states. So she's saying that Mr. Smiley Boy and his CCP, through what they call magic weapons, have the ability to undermine the sovereignty and integrity of political systems of targeted states. That's quite profound. It says conference paper presented, so this is a conference paper that was presented on the corrosion of democracy under China's global influence, supported by the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy and hosted in Arlington, Virginia, USA, September the 16th and 17th in 2017. So this has been going on for a while. And they want to corrode democracy, which, well, I don't really have a problem with, but we just go back to the realm here. That's what we do. England goes back to the realm, constitutional monarchy, and a representative parliament that has to operate not on its own whims and willies, but under the constitutional realm, which means this bankrupt government, which it is, like any other business that goes bankrupt, you fold it, all debts are off, and we go back to the realm. And it's as simple as that. And I had a professor, a constitutional law professor, tell me that what I've just said to you was pure genius. Now then, how about that? So he understands the English Constitution, and what I've just said to you about folding the corporation and going back to the realm, he classed as pure genius. He'd never even thought of it. How about that? So these are important. Key point, CCP General Secretary Xi Jinping is leading an accelerated expansion of political influence activities worldwide. The expansion of these activities is connected to both the CCP government's domestic pressures and foreign agenda. The paper creates a template of policies and modes of China's expanded foreign influence activities in the Xi era. The paper uses this template to examine the extent to which one representative small state, New Zealand, is being targeted by China's new influence agenda. And I'd say that big gob freaky woman that's running it, her, and she's a complete fruitcake. Obviously, she's tapped into this. Executive summary. In June 2017, the New York Times and The Economist featured stories on China's political influence in Australia. The New York Times headline asked, "Are Australia's politics too easy to corrupt?" While The Economist sarcastically referred to China as the medal country. The two articles were reacting to an investigation by Fairfax Media and ABC into the extent of China's political interference in Australia that built on internal inquiries into the same issue by ASIO and Australia's Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet in 2015 and 2016. The media and official reports concluded that Australia was the target of a foreign interference campaign by China on a larger scale than that being carried out by any other nation. Well, that's saying something because the US have been in there for a long time. And that the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, was working to infiltrate Australian political and foreign affairs circles as well to acquire influence over Australia's Chinese population. Now then, so they're scuppering up, so they're obviously giving them stuff, money, everything. It's probably why they put monosodium glutamate in all your Chinese meals. The stories continue to play out in Australian media with more and more revelations of China's political interference appearing almost daily. The focus of media attention has been on Australia, but the People's Republic of China's PRC, or the People's Republic of China, abbreviated PRC, attempts to guide, buy and coerce political influence abroad and as widespread as it can. China's foreign influence activities are part of a global strategy with almost identical long-standing approaches adapted to fit current government policies. They are a core task of China's United Front work, one of the CCP's famed magic weapons that helped bring it to power. So these magic weapons. This policy paper examines China's foreign political influence activities under Xi Jinping, using one very representative state, New Zealand, as a case study. New Zealand's relationship with China is of interest because the Chinese government regards New Zealand as an exemplar of how it would like its relations to be with other states. So what it's creating in New Zealand, we're going to get an idea of what it's going to try and insist, well, not try, what it's going to insist on for other states outside of China. In 2013, China's New Zealand ambassador described the two countries' relationship as a model to other Western countries. And after Premier Li Qiang visited New Zealand in 2017, a Chinese diplomat favourably compared New Zealand-China relations to the level of closeness China had with Albania in the early 1960s. The paper, that's Komning, by the way. So this is your Komning Byzantium again. You can tie in through Albania to China as an interesting first responder. The paper considers the potential impact of China's expanded political influence activities in New Zealand and how any effects could be mitigated and countered. The People's Republic of China, as a party state that since its founding in 1949, has always relied on non-traditional means for its diplomacy and economic relations. Agencies of the CCP, such as the United Front Work Department, the Central Propaganda Department, the International Liaison Department, the All China Federation of Overseas Chinese, and the Chinese People Association or Friendship with Foreign Countries, all play an important part in Chinese foreign affairs and defense. So this, you got to remember, this is tied into the defense as well. So what they're doing through here, they're also classing as their defense. So as America uses the term national interest, that's China saying pretty much the same thing, and it's doing it through all these organizations. So it's basically copying what the US federal system has done anyway. The work of the PRC state sector organizations involved in China's external relations, as well as increasingly SEOs and private firms. The key concept in Chinese foreign policy, which links party and state organizations, is the United Front. The United Front is originally a Leninist tactic of strategic alliances. Lenin wrote in Left-Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder. Lenin wrote in Left-Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder. The more powerful enemy can be vanquished only by exerting the utmost effort and without fail, most thoroughly, carefully, attentively, and skillfully, using every, even the smallest rift among the enemies of every antagonism of interest among the bourgeoisie of the various countries and among the various groups of types of bourgeoisie within various countries, and also by taking advantage of every, even the smallest opportunity of gaining a mass ally, even though this ally be temporary, facilitating, unstable, unreliable, and conditional. Those who fail to understand this fail to understand even a particle of Marxism. So this is Marxism, yeah, the Bolshevism that took over Russia. Yeah, same thing. Now transfer, we're calling it CCP, but it's the same strategy. So from the mid-1930s, CCP strategies adapted Lenin's tactics to Chinese circumstances and culture. The CCP's United Front can be used in both domestic and foreign policy. United Front activities incorporates working with groups and prominent individuals in society, information management and propaganda, and it has also frequently been a means of facilitating espionage. Now, I'm going to leave that here because we'll have to continue this, but what we'll probably do is just pull out some important background, but it sets the scene that basically China, far from being benevolent, is on a mission, and it's not a good mission. And when you look at what they're implementing in China, that's what they want to do everywhere else. And we want to watch New Zealand to see, get an idea what that's going to be for states outside China. Also, this system is still under the wing of such as Chabad Lubavitch, the Jesuits, all the old Roman incursions, but friendly ones, into China over the centuries, now being pulled in and run under this Prussian load of shit. which is why, as we did earlier, the importance of this elite moving from Israel into this heavenly Jerusalem, again, is still a part. They're only able to do this kind of stuff because they've got the dragon and they've got these 10-horned empires supporting them. Yeah? So that's the basic narrative of tonight's live stream. And it ends on this importance of China and how we really need to start to get a grip of what the hell's going on. Because all our politicians, all these groups, you know, all these foundations are all operating to this agenda. So we will leave that there now because we've not got long left. We're 1 minute 40. And I would like, silent weapons for quiet wars. I've got a good report on that on site. We'll probably be wise to go through that on a live stream. But maybe when I can get this Streamlabs to work correctly, I think I have to throw some money at it. I think that's why it's not working. I think there's a cost to this Streamlabs. So that's why we're good at first and then it just went tits up. So never mind, but we will get there. So Orban's won, that's good. Subjects, yeah. Andrew Goodman, sadly, we can't upload here. Okay, digital currency, that program. Bank of China, Hong Kong, in with committee. They all are, aren't they? I mean, I have got some. In fact, I've probably got a lot more on the Committee 300 than I've actually put up on this site because we did a lot of work in that respect because of John Coleman, of course. So, well, I'm not going yet. That's the business side of things. Now let's get to what's good for us. Let's have a look at some more, just continuing this herbal stuff. And I'm doing it at the end of the video, so if it's interesting for you, you can always just go to the end of the video when you want. And again, it's Culpepper's English Physician, and it's All Heal. It says, it is called All Heal, Hercules, All Heal, and Hercules Woundwort, because it is supposed that Hercules learned the virtues of this herb from Chiron when he learned physic of him. Some call it Panay and others upon a wart. Description: its root is long, thick, and exceedingly full of juice, of a hot and biting taste. The leaves are great and large and winged, almost like ash tree leaves, but that they are somewhat hairy, each leaf consisting of five or 6 pair of such wings set on against the other, upon footstalks, broad below but narrow towards the end. On one of the leaves is a little deeper at the bottom than the other, of a fair yellowish, fresh green colour. They are a bitterish taste, being chewed in the mouth. From among these riseth up a stalk, green in colour, round in form, great and strong in magnitude, 5 or 6 feet in altitude, with many joints and some leaves thereat. Towards the top come forth umbels of small yellow flowers, and after they are passed away, you may find whitish yellow, short, flat feeds, bitter also to the taste. Place: having given you the description of the herb from the bottom to the top, give me leave to tell you that there are other herbs called by this name, but because they are strangers in England, I gave only the description of this, which is easy to be had in the gardens of diverse persons. Time: although Gerard Faith although Gerard saith that they flower from the beginning of May to the end of December, experience teaches those that keep it in their gardens that it does not flower till the latter end of the summer, and sheds its feeds presently after. Government and virtues: it's under the dominion of Mars, hot, biting, and choleric, and remedies what evils Mars afflicts the body of man, with by sympathy as viper's flesh attracts poison and the lodestone iron. It kills worms, helps the gout, cramp and convulsions, provokes urine, and helps all joint aches. It helps all cold griefs of the head, the vertigo, falling sickness and lethargy, the wind colic, obstructions of the liver and spleen, stone in the kidneys and bladder. It provokes the terms, expels the dead birth. It is excellent good for the grief of the sinews, itch, sores, and toothache. Also the biting of mad dogs and venomous beasts. I think that's supposed to say beasts. And purgeth cholera very gently. So that's a bit of a wonder drug, that, and that's all heal. So, I mean, gout and all these, you know, all this stuff. Now, the next one is anemone, called also wildflower because they've these F's, because they say the flowers never open, but when the wind bloweth. Pliny is the author. If it not so, that's F's. If it not so, blame him. They feed also, if it bears at any all fat, all flies away with the wind. So I think when it says they feed also, that means they're food. Place and time. They are sown usually in the gardens of the curious and flower in the springtime. As for the description, I shall pass, they being well known to those that saw them. Okay, he's passing. We don't sow them. Government and virtues. It's under the dominion of Mars, so another Mars, being supposed to be kind of crowfoot. The leaves provoke the terms mightily, being boiled and the decoction drunk. The body being bathed with the decoction of them cures the leprosy. The leaves being stamped and the juice snuffed up the nose purgeth the head greatly. So do the root being chewed in the mouth, for it causeth much spitting, and bringeth away many watery and phlegmatic humours, and is therefore excellent for the lethargy. And when all is done, let physicians say what they please. All the pills in the dispensary purge not the head, like to hot things held in the mouth. Being made into an ointment, and the eyelids anointed therewith, it helps inflammation of the eyes, whereby it is palpable that every stronger draweth its weaker light. The same ointment is exceedingly good to cleanse malignant and corroding ulcers. So that's another one under the Mars. So can you see how when you start looking at this kind of stuff in this way, everything we need is there. It just means we're going to have to make effort. Effort is going to have to be made. And I've been gibbering on about this stuff for years, and always saying I'm going to have to get into it, but I never do. But I'm going to do. It's me. It's part of the plan. So I'll just give them 2 for this week. So what are we on? 147. Oh, not too bad. Which licorice to buy for COPD? You just want, right, so you want solid, pure licorice. You can get it online if you can't get it locally. We have a sweet shop around here and you can buy proper good stuff, but licorice is just unreal what it does. It's phenomenal stuff. Make the stuff live. Well, actually, I can't make it, but I can show you. So that's what I use. It's just solid, thick licorice, and I take about much that side of my finger every few days, and it coats your lungs. It cleans your colon, amongst a myriad of things. I have wrote up, and I said I was going to put it up, and I didn't. I'll put that up this week because it does. It's amazing stuff. I've done licorice for years, just for the lungs, but mainly started it for the colon. You know, when you're not passing stuff, that just keeps, you know, it works a treat. So make the stuff live. Where's the shop show? I'm putting right. Aussie Mills. If you go in Aussie Mills, you've got Stockley's Sweets. Go in there. They have got tons of different kinds of it. They've got the chewy, you've got the hard, you've got all sorts. But at least you know it's real. It's real. It's not Annalise, which a lot of licorice, what they're claiming to be licorice is not. It's Annalise. It also prevents herpes from doing its thing. So it's a genetic condition, is herpes, and licorice prevents it from doing it. So it gone. It does that as well. Honestly, it's an absolute dynamite plant. Unbelievable. But your lungs, it's one of the best things you can slap on your lungs. You know, if you've got COPD or any kind of lung problems, start getting licorice down you. Because of course, with most of what they're doing to everybody today, it's all aimed at your lungs. So it'd be worthwhile everybody getting into this stuff just to make sure you've got a good supply. Because they're spraying like mad, I've noticed, for the last month or two. Massive spraying, massive. So it's obvious, in my opinion, that's how they're getting all these noxious, odd diseases going about. So, where's the shop? Yeah, so Aussie Mills, mate. Andrew, that's all you need to get to. H2O is hydrogen peroxide. It's good for COPD. Is it? So, H2O2, food grade. Let me write that down because I have a few mates that have COPD. This is why I studied these kind of things. If I know somebody that's got a condition and they want to try something other than the meds, I'll actually put some effort in and do a bit of an investigation on stuff. So what's that? Let me get that. H2O2, hydrogen peroxide. Where do you get that from? What does it come as, like? Food grade. It's got to be food, make sure. It's food grade. Okay, H2O2. Okay, excellent. Yeah, I mean, I've known a few people that have died of it as well. I mean, and I will say, I think I've taken it in my lungs in these last few years. But yet, then when I'm going to do cycling this year, and I'll bet you when I get out on that a few times, I bet my lungs come right back to, if they did like last time, they just came right back to normal. So you use it, do you, in winter? Right. Well, how do you get it? What does it come in? Pinecone pollen is also black seed. So how does it? What kind of is it? A liquid? Is it something you eat? What is this H2O2? How do you get it and how do you ingest it? Have you? You rock and roll, mate. That'll do. Right, you're on. Have you got my email? Just bang us something up the email. Yeah, you can buy everything online, but you never know what you're getting, are you? You know what I'm saying? This Stockley's is a toffee factory. They actually make it. They make it local. So, cheers, Andrew. Nice one. And we'll arrange. We'll meet up, man. I'll try a bit of that, but I'll definitely pass some on to a mate of mine because he's bad with it. Well, thank you very much for taking part, everybody. I hope you've learned something and gained some info from that. But you know, things are not what they seem. But then I think what we've explored today certainly makes it make a bit more sense, does it not? And of course, now the ruble is on the trying to destroy the dollar. So not liking that. And Biden's helping it every single bit of the way. That's a fact. So on that note, I will say, till the next time.